Patriotism. Perhaps more than any other country, Americans are known for it. You can't go more than a block down any street before seeing an American flag waving proudly. And while American patriotism is declining these days, patriotism is a defining characteristic of our media and our daily lives. It has been shaping American ideals for the 2 centuries it has thrived. Today, American patriotism is associated with ideals of true liberty and independence, a belief in divine providence, or the belief that our righteous country is inconquerable, and the belief that all men are created equal, and that no one is excluded from the blessings of American freedom. These 3 facets of American patriotism can be traced back to 3 documents from the 18th and 19th centuries: the Declaration of Independence, the Star-Spangled Banner, and the Gettysburg Address. These 3 documents and the events associated with them dramatically changed American ideals and patriotism, each in their own ways, all working together to shape our American identity today. It all began with the Declaration of Independence, which signified the ideological birth of America and American ideals. The Anglicization of America, the spreading of Enlightenment philosophies of liberty and rights of the governed, and the increasing oppression of British taxes and invasive laws culminated in a radical document that rejected the British government's right to rule on the grounds that it violated the inalienable rights of all men to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In this way, Jefferson, Hancock, Franklin, and the other signers not only declared the independence of a new nation, but the independence of each of its inhabitants. Our nation was founded on the principles of individual liberty, and it is still the most defining characteristic of American patriotism today. The First Amendment is one of our most treasured values, and any threat to it we perceive in government policies instantly raises red flags and sends crowds of protesters marching down the streets of Washington. American life today revolves more around the individual than ever before in American history, yet the philosophies and the ideals of individualism began centuries ago and became solidified in the very document that founded our country. Almost 40 years later, in the War of 1812, a war in which no nations, much less the U.S., made any tangible gains, a man named Francis Scott Key was being held on board a British ship during the attack on Fort McHenry in Baltimore. It was there that he penned our current national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, when by the dawn's early light, the American flag still waved proudly over the unconquered American base. The Americans' unwillingness to surrender and the belief that America was under divine providence, as proven by unlikely success in the Revolutionary War and an escape from defeat in the War of 1812, are the inspiration behind the now famous poem. While America gained no land or any other spoils in the war in which the poem was born, Americans were still revitalized with the spirit of victory after successes like the Battle of New Orleans led by future President Andrew Jackson, even if such victories were meaningless since the Treaty of Ghent ending the war was signed before the victory took place. The excitement and patriotic passions birthed by this period and the perceived victories of the war are evident in the overwhelming victory Jackson had in the election of 1828. Francis Scott Key was voicing in his poem the patriotic feelings of Americans all across the country. The influence of the ideal of the unconquerable American spirit became even more evident in the 20th century during the World Wars and in the later Korean, Vietnam, and Middle Eastern wars. The Monroe Doctrine, which largely maintained an abstention from foreign affairs, was soon cast aside in favor of the necessity to spread democracy and American freedom to all the nations of the earth. The belief that America was an unconquerable world power went unchallenged until the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Yet because of the patriotic ideals shaped by Francis Scott Key in the War of 1812, Americans responded immediately with the War on Terror and a hasty patchwork of security laws and agencies to fix up the hole in what was once believed to be superior defenses. Less than a century after the Declaration of Independence declared all men equal, Abraham Lincoln in his Gettysburg Address reaffirmed and solidified the notion, applying it to all races of men, and paving the way for further reform and increase of civil rights for all Americans, black and white, male and female. While the Declaration of Independence makes the same statement, that all men are created equal, the statement then applied mostly to property-owning white men. And while white men of all classes gained their civil rights in full since the writing of the Constitution, women and all other races were still lacking. What the Gettysburg Address did was clarify the meaning of the statement originally in the Declaration and open the gates for true equality, which became one of the proudest features of American policy and culture, and a great source of patriotism. More than a verbal reaffirmation of the equality of all people straight from the U.S. President, the Gettysburg Address itself has become a symbol of American patriotism as well as its author. Today, the Lincoln Memorial, as well as Lincoln's face on pennies and $5 bills, remind Americans of when equality was guaranteed for all, and when the country began to fundamentally change to include all men and women in the blessings of liberty. As each minority group since the Civil War has fought for equality, the American public has become more and more accepting each time. Some of you may be wondering why the Constitution is not on this list, or why I chose the Gettysburg Address over the Emancipation Proclamation as a shaper of American ideals of equality. The U.S. Constitution, while creating a stable base for our government, did not advance American thought or ideals any further than the Declaration did a decade ago. It did not even include a guarantee of individual liberties until the Anti-Federalists demanded a Bill of Rights be added. The Emancipation Proclamation, while inspiring the Union and revitalizing American spirits, did not actually free any Union slaves, and was contingent upon the Union winning the war. It was these three documents, along with the events that spawned them, that fundamentally changed American thought in meaningful ways that have lasted to this day. And while American patriotism has continued to evolve beyond the basic principles first presented in these documents, nothing will continue to inspire generations of Americans like the words that built this country and the people that wrote them.